In case you're wondering, this is Aileen talking, and I'm Program Manager with the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. And on the line, I also have Susan Walmer, who is the Chief Executive Officer with the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. And we have Sean James, who will be our key speaker. And I will introduce Sean just before his presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Sue. And you can see we've kind of been rotating through this presentation, and of course now I can't. And Sue is going to start us off with a hello and a land acknowledgement. So Sue, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm getting a double background here, but I'm going to go for this anyways. I just wanted to say welcome to everyone. This is our first webinar, and I am gonna say hi and start us with the land acknowledgement. We start all of our sessions with the land acknowledgement. Can you hear me once or twice on this webinar right now?
Just once. You're perfect.
That's perfect. Okay. So we'd like to start by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, whose presence here continues to this day. We would also like to acknowledge the land that we are on is at the meeting place of two treaties, the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and those of the First Nations of the Williams Treaty. We thank them and other Indigenous peoples for sharing this land with us. We would also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of the Georgina Island First Nation as our closest Indigenous community. We acknowledge this land and the people because the first step to reconciliation is recognizing the existence of Indigenous people. A shared understanding of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us to walk together in a better future. We give deep gratitude to the Indigenous peoples of these lands who have been stewards of this land since time immemorial. The Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust endeavors to honor the land and its treaties by strengthening our relationship and responsibilities to them. And I'd just like to add a personal note. In this last month or so, I think that it's even more important that we come together as people all across this province, this country, and the world to work together. So thank you all for doing that. Take care. Make a witch.
Hey, thank you very much, Sue, for that. So I'm just going to give a little introduction on what we do as the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust, because I find many people aren't really aware of what a land trust does and why we're bringing this webinar to you today. So if I can get this to work, there we go. So here we kind of look at what we've done and what we hope to do. So a land trust is a charitable organization, and our mission is to protect land on the Oak Ridges Moraine, on and near the Oak Ridges Moraine, so that it stays protected forever. And I have to say I love what I do because I see some of the most beautiful properties, and I know that they're not going to become a parking lot or a subdivision. They're going to stay beautiful. Those wetlands are going to stay as wetlands. Those forests will just continue to mature. It really is very rewarding to be part of this. So right now we have 60 properties and 4,800 acres that have been permanently protected, and that's protected for good. They can't be sold or developed or anything, so that's really neat. In case you don't know what the Oak Ridges Moraine is, it's a feature created about 13,000 years ago. It's home to hundreds of rare and at-risk species, and it's an important source of drinking water for over 250,000 people. So we feel, and hopefully you feel the same, that that's really worth protecting. And here's some more stats on it. We have wetlands, kettle lakes, 64 different rivers and streams start flowing north and south. A little view of the Moraine, so it's quite a significant feature in southern Ontario. And here's just showing the properties that we protected across the Moraine. So we go from one end to the other. We protect through Ecological Gifts program. So as I said, in this case, it's federally protected forever. And landowners get an opportunity to leave a legacy for the future generations with these gorgeous ecosystems and nature areas. And this is what brings us to today, is that we like to do outreach and education programs so people can understand about nature, understand why it's important to protect it, and experience all the benefits of being in nature. Now, if you look, you see that there are handouts as part of this webinar, and there are details in there about land trusts. There is also Sean's presentation, as well as a list of native plant nurseries that are currently doing delivery or contactless pickup in light of the COVID-19 situation, so that you do have access to them. And if you want to start planting your native plants, there's an opportunity to do it even in this current situation. So I'll draw attention to that. And just so you guys know, protecting these areas, it's not just for the benefit of that immediate area, it protects their community. So there's an economic goods and services, and that is how valuable those ecological systems are to all of us. So whether it's flood control or carbon sequestration, there's all these great, wonderful values to that. And it's also great for protecting our natural resources and our quality of life. So we're very happy to be part of that and to protect the land. And in case you're curious, we have some more upcoming free programs, and we're building even more as we speak. Well, not literally right now, but I've been working on it all day. So a little shout out to our funders, which we could not do these wonderful things without them. So the next one is also a Sean, and that is what to do with a downpour. And that talks about rain gardens and how to manage your rainwater on your site in a really beautiful and effective way so that you can help offset funding. You can have great features in your landscape, and it's something to do while you're staying at home. It makes a big difference. And then this is a new thing that we have coming up on Wednesday, and this is the Great Backyard Bio-Olympics. And our first two events are the short distance marathon. So this is a challenge to see how many steps you can get throughout the day on Earth Day without leaving your house or your yard or your property. And then the second event, which will run for an hour, is a speed scavenger hunting. And this is finding nature and earth-friendly things around your house, both indoors and out. And you have to do it within an hour. And we're going to have prizes for different age groups, for different areas. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we will have that registration up and running very soon on our website. So hopefully you guys can participate in some of those. And here's just some contact information. Now, if you're calling our office, just keep in mind that we're working from home. So it might take us a while to get back to us, but email is probably the most effective way to get in touch with us. So that's a little bit about us at the Moraine and the Land Trust. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our speaker, Sean, and hopefully this transition will be smooth. So let's go to Sean right now. Just a little introduction to Sean. If anyone doesn't know Sean, he's one of my favorite people, but he's been named by Garden Making magazine as one of 20 making a difference. Gardening has been Sean's hobby and profession for over 35 years. He really knows his stuff. He's a graduate of the Niagara Parks School of Horticulture, a master gardener, a writer, a teacher, and he has been focusing on eco-gardening techniques before it was a thing. He's been very proactive and on the edge. He donates a lot of his time working on invasive species programs and pollinators and trees, and teaching the next generation about sustainable landscaping. He's been one of the first ones doing this rain gardens, incorporating native plants. He really is a leader in terms of environmental landscaping, and I'm very glad I know Sean. He's taught me a lot, and he's also just a really fun guy. So I will turn it over to Sean. Just a little bit of, I guess, housekeeping is that we do have a question section. You can plug those in, and at the end we're going to deal with the questions and hopefully get through as many as we can. And I know that some people did send in their questions ahead of time, which is great, so we'll also get to those as well. And I'm seeing the first question, just housekeeping, where are the handouts? I'm not sure if my screen is going to be the same as yours, but if you have a control panel on your right side, there should be one option under questions that says handouts, and it should say 4 of 5. So hopefully, Alan, you can see those. Okay, if not, just throw me another question. So I will finally turn it over to Sean and let him talk about nifty native plants. All right, Sean.
Awesome.
I'm going
Thank you very
to
much.
make you the presenter and possibly a floating head.
Oh, my screen. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yay.
Can everyone see that okay? I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you very much. So hopefully this is working. This is new for so many of us. I figure this is by far the largest percentage of my audience that's ever been wearing pajamas. So that's kind of cool. And we're going to talk, before I actually get into the native specific side of things, I have had a rant, seems like too aggressive a word, but I've just been thinking this year that we gardeners deserve capes. There are so many things that we can do as gardeners that affect the world in a positive way, where we can grow plants, we can sequester carbon, we can improve the soil, we can increase biodiversity, we can solve food security issues. Gardening even lowers crime in a neighborhood. It's absolutely amazing everything that gardening can do. And I think that we need to remember that when we're out gardening. It is something that certainly we do for ourselves, but it's also something that we do for everybody and for the planet and everything on the planet. So moving on to natives themselves, I think it's important to remember that there's a lot that we can do. Even just planting one plant, though, will make a huge difference. Having one plant in the garden feeds a lot of creatures. And when we begin at the beginning, when we begin with something like an early pollinator support plant like pussy willow, that's a great plant to start supporting pollinators at the very beginning of the year. We don't really think about these things necessarily. I'm sure some of us do, but when I look out my window, my office window, I can see a pussy willow plant in the little creek beside my house, and it is swarming with little micro bees on a nice day at this time of year. And you know, everybody wants to save the bees, and that's a good thing. Being able to do it with a tree is something that we don't necessarily think about. We think of bulbs. You'll see a lot of non-native bulbs in the garden right now, and that's fine. If I could get people to plant 2 trees, I would get them to plant a red maple and I would get them to plant a red oak. The red oak we'll get to later. The red maple, I was actually shocked to see how many different species feed on it. And you know what? It's a lovely tree. It has multiple seasons of interest. The fruit are beautiful in the summertime. It's got bright red keys. These are the flowers in the springtime. It supports multiple species and of course beautiful color in the fall, bright red leaves. Although it's a good lesson that if you're going to pick something for fall color, you want to be able to pick it in the fall. Ideally, you're taking a chance with nature. I wanted to use a red maple as a plant for a keystone situation in a property of mine, a very high visibility situation. So I went to the nursery in the fall and there were 32 red maples there and they weren't all lovely. So I made sure that I picked the best one. I picked the one with the best color for my customer. And you can certainly do that in your garden as well. It works the other way as well. There are things that bloom in the fall. This is our native witch hazel, which is a lovely, lovely plant. I love witch hazels. There are non-native spring blooming witch hazels and this lovely native witch hazel. They bloom and they unbloom. They have little finger-like petals that sit all curled up like a fist on a not nice day. And then on a sunny day, they extend. And then if the weather goes downhill, they curl back up again. And they'll do that for weeks. And they also have something that's very valuable in the garden, which is good texture. Flowers come and go, and texture will make or break your garden. And these have very large leaves that have beautiful venation. And my favorite kind of color, which is complex fall color. It's important to remember how much you're doing and for how long. There we go. And flowers come and go all year long. These are monarchs, and these are feeding on a really beautiful plant called Vernonia. And everybody is looking to support butterflies, support monarchs. It's interesting to note that everybody thinks about monarchs and we think about supporting butterflies and so on. But when they start actually nibbling on the plants, people get quite concerned. So remember that it's okay. That's why we actually have the plants there, is so that creatures can feed on them. And this is a lovely plant. When we do finally get to get out there and start going to garden centers and so on, try and remember to support the little crazy garden centers run by the little crazy gardeners, because they're the ones that bring us these new cool plants. I was up at a garden center up in Acton, Lost Horizons, which has a beautiful display garden as well. And I'm walking around and I'm looking at all the neat plants, and then I looked up over me and there's this ironweed that's 6 feet tall, and it's absolutely spectacular. It's magenta and gorgeous, and it's just a monarch magnet. All sorts of butterflies and bees come to it. There are many different species of ironweed, of Vernonia, in the garden. So you know, there's going to the little garden center really helps them out, and they need that a lot from us. So monarchs are something called an obligate feeder. They feed on one type of plant. So my neighbor actually paid me to take the violets out of his lawn, and then looked over the fence quite mystified when I put them in my lawn. Firstly, because I like them. Secondly, because the flowers are edible, and that's kind of cool. I made tea with them the other day. That was thoroughly mediocre. Really cool, but wasn't fantastic. But they're food for the fritillary butterfly, which is a spectacular large orange butterfly with silver spots on it. And of course, milkweed for monarchs. There's a beautiful butterfly called a Baltimore checker spot, and it feeds on turtlehead, which is a lovely, lovely plant, and food for certain bees. Only the big bumblebees, I guess the medium-sized bumblebees, can muscle their way into these flowers, which is kind of funky. And it's a great rain garden plant as well. I've started using, in my own landscapes, I've started using violets as a ground cover. While a lot of people are weeding them out, I'm encouraging them, which is kind of funky. And then there's a little, I don't know, physically unremarkable, I don't want to be hard on the butterfly, but there's a butterfly called the mottled dusky wing, which is a little brown jobby, or LBJ, as we say in the birding world. And it only feeds on New Jersey tea. So having New Jersey tea in the garden is going to support a lot of creatures, but especially the mottled dusky wing butterfly. So it's important to remember all of the good that you can do when you do this sort of thing. This is sort of the best example that I've seen of a butterfly decimating a really cool plant. But you got to remember that that's what's going to happen every now and then. This is a plant that blooms in late summer, and then the flowers stay on it deep into the fall and the winter even. That's why it's called pearly everlasting, even though it may still not be in bloom per se. The flower structure persists there for quite a while. And they get these funky little spiky caterpillars on them in the springtime that will just wipe out that plant, and it'll come back. That's okay. But remember that that's why we're planting the plant. You'll see in the photo here, that is the painted lady butterfly. I can't tell the difference between painted ladies and American painted ladies, but both of them feed on pearly everlasting. And also a lovely little plant called pussy toes, which is one of the cutest little plants in the garden. But yeah, just remember that. I had someone get quite upset because a beautiful little caterpillar called a tiger milkweed tiger moth was feeding on the milkweed, and they were freaking out. And I said, it's okay. We're not just planting for monarchs. We're planting for everything that would feed on this. So it's worth remembering. And there's lots more that can be benefited. These are hoverflies. Hoverflies are really cool. Hoverflies are an amazing predator. They feed on aphids. They're a fantastic pollinator, and they're just all around cool because they're a bee mimic. So they do pretty much everything that bees do. They're not quite as proficient as pollinators, but they do a lot more, and there are loads of different kinds of hoverflies, which is pretty cool. There are lots of different beneficial flies in the garden, like tachnid flies as well. This is a good rain garden plant. You can also grow it in the regular part of the garden, as it were. good bold texture, yellow fall color. I love these little sort of Sputnik flowers that they get on it. This is buttonbush, and buttonbush is again a bee magnet. I believe it's also good for birds, the seed heads that persist well into the winter, which means it's got multiple seasons of interest. Those also have seeds that all sorts of creatures can feed on. Everybody asks me about salt tolerant plants. Anybody who is by a roadside or a sidewalk, it's a common question from folks. And sumac, I realize that it's a plant that runs, and everybody comes looking for no maintenance gardening. And we can have low maintenance gardening, but there's still a bit of work to be done. And sometimes it's worth putting up with some of the eccentricities, just like it's worth putting up with the eccentricities of some people. It's worth putting up with the eccentricities of some plants and working around it to have beautiful fall color, to have fruits that the birds like, that you can make a really good lemony tea from. I've even had a syrup made from it in a drink. All sorts of creatures, again, feed on this plant. And even when it's not in leaf, if you've seen it covered in snow in the wintertime, not that we want to hear about winter and snow, but it really has a really nifty structure in the wintertime. And again, texture, 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 very important to remember. Burning bush drives me up the wall, to be honest. Not only is it an invasive species, we've pulled out a couple of hundred on a job, believe it or not, but it really only does one thing, and even that it's kind of mediocre at. There are beautiful plants called chokeberry, and there's a black chokeberry, which is what's pictured here, and this is a locally native plant. There's also a red chokeberry, which is I would call it a near native. It almost grows right here, and they have beautiful complex fall color. They have berries that the birds like. They have white flowers in the spring, a lot more bang for your buck. There are other plants that do better than burning bush. We'll get to it later, but the Grow Me Instead guide is worth looking at, and it offers alternatives for invasive species, because there are lots of things that will do the same job that aren't going to hurt the garden. Potentilla, which they've changed the name of, they keep changing the names on things, but we're plowing through that, and Liatris are two beautiful plants to have in the regular garden, but also in the rain garden. A lot of our native plants, I don't know what it is about our particular climate, but it tests plants. So a lot of the plants that you're going to use that are native are also going to be more bulletproof. They're going to be tolerant of a wider range of situations. Maybe it's that this is home for them, so they're just pretty easygoing about things. But this is a plant, Potentilla, actually both of them are plants that will tolerate spring flooding and summer drought really super well and be spectacular in the garden. One of the things that I'm really passionate about with native gardening is that you really, any kind of gardening really, you shouldn't ever have to sacrifice anything to have a beautiful garden. You just use the same ideas of flowers come and go, texture will make or break your garden, and you will have a beautiful garden. If you follow those guidelines, I'm not a big fan of rules when it comes to art. And remember that gardening is art. If your neighbor doesn't like your garden, that's fine. It's your garden, it's your art. Personally, I have a garden that's sort of English cottage on steroids, and not everybody loves my garden. There are people who vehemently hate my garden, and that's okay. I don't want the elevator music of gardening. It's your garden. I give you permission to have a garden that's different from your neighbors, but it can still be beautiful. I do this for a living. I'm a landscape design and installer and consultant, and I'm asked by my colleagues, how do you sell natives? Everybody thinks it's hard to sell natives, and I tell people, you know, if they ask for natives, I give them natives. If they show me that they like eco-friendly gardening, then I give them natives. And if they don't ask for natives, I don't bring it up. I just plant native plants because native plants are beautiful. I give them natives and don't tell them, and no one's any the wiser, but they have a beautiful garden. People have this perception that you're giving up beauty when you plant native plants, and it really doesn't have to be like that. There are lovely plants. This is Dwarf Arctic Willow. It's a great rain garden plant. This is a plant that is one of those super bulletproof plants that you see at the mall. And a lot of people aren't going to put this in their garden because they see it at the mall, but this is a great plant to have in any garden. It's got beautiful fine texture. It's got beautiful blue leaves. It's got great fine boned texture in the winter time as well. It puts up with salt. It puts up with flooding. It puts up with drought. It puts up with the people who maintain mall gardens. And if it gets out of control, if it gets old and, excuse me, if it has a lot of old dead growth in it, you can go in and you can take out a third of the eldest growth. That's what the textbooks will say, is take out a third of the eldest growth. And they're very serious about that sort of thing. And I have found over the years that nature is a lot more understanding. You think about where these plants grow, they often grow, a lot of the shrubs grow along riverbanks, where in the springtime, every now and then, the ice rises up and just shears everything off in the floodplain. So they're, between that and things like beavers, they're used to being cut down hard. So you can cut these plants right to the ground and nothing but little circles left when you're finished, and they will come back beautifully. And you can do that every 3 to 5 years, and you can do it in the spring. And so these are plants that you can rejuvenate whenever you want to in the garden. Most multi-stem deciduous shrubs, so things that have, well, lots of stems coming from the bottom and drop their leaves in the fall, most of them can be rejuvenated. This is one of my favorite plants. I think it deserves a lot more credit than it gets. This is sparkleberry, also known as winterberry, which to me is a much more boring name. And if we're going to use different common names for different plants, then I'm definitely choosing the cool name. This is a plant that will survive in a McDonald's garden. I'm not knocking McDonald's. I'm just saying that they don't necessarily have the best soil and the best situations for plants. And yet this is a plant that will grow there. This is a plant that will stand a fair bit of shade. This is a plant that will be beautiful in rain gardens. And there's a bit of a debate about using the straight species versus using what we call nativars or near natives. I'm okay with using cultivars of different plants, nativars of different plants, because you're still satisfying much of the eco niche. And if it's got a better foliage color, if it's got a bigger, brighter, and more berries, so be it. My favorite of the, where I'm going with this, is that my favorite of the sparkleberries is berry poppins. And you need one male. There are male plants and female plants, and you need one male for every 5 female plants. And the male pollinator is Mr. Poppins. So there's Berry Poppins and Mr. Poppins, which is kind of cool. So yeah, if same deal with rain gardens and so on, people will, if you ask them, they'll cross their arms and they'll lean away and they'll say, no, I'm not interested in anything like that. But if you just incorporate it into your garden or someone else's garden, then they'll ask why, they'll be engaged in it, they'll love it. They're just afraid of admitting that they don't know something. So you can definitely have these plants in gardens and have these features in gardens, and people think it's super cool once they know what it is. And you can grow really neat plants like marsh milkweed. This is a beautiful plant that blooms in midsummer, which is when we need a kick of color. It is a pollinator magnet for many kinds of pollinators. It has a fragrant flower, which is fantastic. It has a neat seed pod that persists well into the fall. It has a beautiful yellow fall color. Remember that perennials, many of them have really cool fall color, which needs to be focused on, I think, a bit more, which is kind of funky. They're like a lot of perennials have really, really cool fall color. So keep an eye out for that. When you're walking around, when you're seeing any garden, always be looking at what's interesting. And certainly we live in a world where you can ask a lot of questions of the internet, of what plant is it, what plant is that, and we can learn and make our gardens better and better that way. Another plant, if you have, I don't think there's any bad soil. A lot of people think they have the worst soil on the planet. I've got sandy soil. Oh my goodness, you think you've got trouble? I've got clay soil. Oh, I've got dry as shade. There's no bad garden. There's no bad situation. It's just a question of having the right plant for the situation. So this is a type of bee balm. We have 2 native bee balms in Ontario, and you can make Earl Grey tea out of them, and it's delicious. And beautiful butterflies come and feed on them, all sorts of beautiful butterflies. If it's in what people would consider to be a challenging clay soil, then it will sort of stay under control a little better. If you put this in a really lush garden that has an irrigation system, then you're going to have powdery mildew and it's going to grow like man, it's going to take over the world. But if you have a challenging garden, this is going to be a good plant for you. And there's our other, believe it or not, that spectacular plant is a native bee balm as well. And you can see in the center and slightly right of the picture, there's a really cool little insect there called a hummingbird moth or a clear-winged sphinx. And people will say to me, you know, I saw a baby hummingbird. I say, well, I don't want to crush your dreams, but you didn't. You saw actually something much cooler. You saw a hummingbird moth, which is a really cool little creature. And they feed on all sorts of different things. Actually, it's another good plant to have in your garden is snowberry, because there are 2 species of clearwings that we have, and one of them only feeds, it's an obligate feeder, there's that word again, on snowberries. 2 more great rain garden plants, goldenrods, which, as I'm sure you know, don't cause allergies, and they're really poorly named sneezeweed. You can call it Helen's flower, that's a better name for it. The orange flower that's in that photograph there, that is fireworks goldenrod. Lots of good goldenrods for the garden that don't take over the world. The one in the picture on the right there that has the pearly crescent butterfly on it, that is Canada goldenrod, and that will take over the world. You probably don't want that one in your regular garden. But there are lots of great goldenrods that you can have. There's early goldenrod, there's stiff goldenrod, there's all kinds of different goldenrods. I have a seaside goldenrod, which is super salt tolerant down by my boulevard, which is kind of funky and blooms mid August. Some of them bloom very late, some of them bloom very early. I need to get myself some early goldenrod, Solidago gensea. If you're having trouble with people not thinking that it's cool to have goldenrods, then you can have, you can just call it Solidago, and that usually sneaks it past people, because most people aren't going to know that it's goldenrod or not. And there's a great goldenrod called zigzag goldenrod, which is a shade tolerant, bold leafed, pollinator attractive goldenrod. You can even eat the leaves, the new leaves at the very top of goldenrods, and they're quite delicious. There are native plants of all different stripes and so on. Very soon we're going to have the eastern redbud coming into bloom. Cercis is a beautiful plant. You can eat the flowers. I was recently reading that you can eat the pods as well if you cook them. I have not done that yet, but I have to soon, and see how that works out, see if they're any good. Certainly one of the challenges that we're going through right now is going to be food security, and a lot of people are looking at growing their own food, and I was one of those weird little kids that knew what to eat in the forest. So I was eating marsh marigold when I was young. I was eating milkweed pods when I was young. I have a near native wisteria in my garden that has delicious flowers. And I know from experience that the flowers on eastern redbud are fantastic as well. And again, great for pollinators, beautiful texture, yellow fall color, great winter interest from the seed pods. You know, that's quite the list, and it's super clay tolerant as well. So that's a pretty impressive list. I would stick to the straight species on those. There's a kaleidoscope of different colors that you could have foliage-wise in your garden, but I would stick with the straight species and try and get locally grown specimens as well. There are all sorts of different 9-barks that you can buy. In the lower right of this picture, you'll see the native 9-bark that's lakeside or a riparian, a riverside species. This is a plant where the true species is quite lovely. It's got 4 seeds of interest from really cool seed heads in the wintertime, flowers in the springtime that the pollinators go gaga over, seeds that are good for the birds, lots and lots going for 9-bark. It's also a reminder of right plant, right place. There are varieties of this, like the purple guy there, that is Diablo 9-bark, and that's a big plant. When we get out and go get exploring in the gardens, go to botanical gardens and see how big plants get. I was down in New Brunswick and I saw this and I went, 12 by 12, that's a big plant. All right, good to know. That's something that I'm gonna have to be a little more careful siting in my garden. But again, a great rain garden plant, a great plant for challenging situations, a little bit shade tolerant, remarkably drought tolerant once it's established. Now is probably a good time to touch on the idea that there's a challenge with native plants, with drought tolerant plants particularly, in that we're used to plants like astilbes, or many people are used to plants like astilbes, that you stick them in the ground and 2 weeks later, they're established. They are in no way, shape, or form tolerant of anything other than shade, I suppose, but they will not handle drought very well. The drought tolerant plants need more care for the first while until they can get established, which is worth thinking about. I love the dogwoods. I have developed a dogwood fetish over the last year or so because I'm seeing more and more variety in them. I'm seeing multiple seasons of interest, beautiful flowers, berries that range from ivory to blue, beautiful fall color, spectacular fall color, actually. Why, sensing a theme, why would you want burning bush, which maybe has 2 weeks of lovely, and often just has 2 weeks of meh. A lot of them don't so much burn as smolder, but this is a plant that has spring flowers, berries for the birds in the summertime, and for you, they're gorgeous and beautiful fall color. And then a lot of them have structures that hold the flowers that persist well into the wintertime, so they get a lot of winter interest as well. And then, of course, there's the yellow twig and the red twig dogwoods and things like winter fire, Arctic fire, midwinter fire that have a cavalcade of different colors that you can have in the garden, and tolerant of a wide range of soil conditions and drought and rain gardens. These are great rain garden plants as well. There's the fall color on gray twig dogwood. Gray twig dogwood needs a marketing agent. Gray twig dogwood doesn't sound very nice at all, but it's a beautiful plant that has, call it fall explosions dogwood, call it what you like. Bird magnet dogwood, there's all sorts of better names that we could come up with for that. I need to really put my little pea brain to that. This is one of my new favorites. This is Cornus amomum, which is just fun to say. Silky dogwood. See, that's a lovely name. Silky dogwood's a lovely name. It's got these blue berries, blue purple berries that are really, really cool. It's got beautiful fall color in the wintertime. It's a smaller dogwood, so maybe it's a better dogwood for a home garden. We're planting this in a rain garden here in the picture down in Dundas. Here's my buddy Brandon planting away like a demon. This is a great plant for the home landscape and really, really undervalued. I'm a big fan. There are new things coming on the market all the time. This is a really rare viburnum, rare-ish in the landscape, but it used to be really, really difficult to get in the home garden. This is maple-leafed viburnum. We're very literal when we name things. Viburnum acerifolium. I'm one of my all-time favorite stories is when I was at the Niagara Parks School of Horticulture. This English couple came up to me and they said, "Excuse me, what's that black bird with the red mark on its wing?" And I said, "Oh, that would be a red-winged blackbird." So this is maple-leafed viburnum, Viburnum acerifolium. Acer is maple, but a lovely plant that has, again, spring flowers, beautiful fall color, shade tolerant, super drought tolerant. It grows on this little an amount of soil on the edges of the escarpment in Dundas, actually, and all over the place. It grows on very thin layers of soil. So this is a plant that can put up with adversity in a big, big way. Viburnum cassinoides or nannyberry, all kinds of different common names for this. Same deal. Great. This is a larger plant, maybe somewhere between small tree and large shrub in your garden, and spring flowers. Beautiful, delicious berries in the summertime. If you get to them before the birds do, fantastic, beautiful plant. But if you don't, hey, that's good for the birds too. Whenever you see a little bird icon in the picture, then it's a plant that's good for birds. That little raindrop tells you that it's good for rain gardens. This is a plant that grows alongside riverways and so on, and that's kind of cool. One of my favorite plants for shade, and a lot of people ask me what's a good plant for dry shade. Flowering raspberry is one of the best plants. Now, if you, again, like the bergamot or a bee balm, if you put this in a rich soil with a lot of water, it's going to spread. And so therefore in those situations, I would call it a ground cover shrub, a shrub that covers the ground. It's going to spread like bush honeysuckle, which I don't think we cover in here, but beautiful large magenta flowers in the springtime and then sporadically through the year, and butter yellow fall color, which is lovely. And it does have fruit, and if it's in a moist situation, that fruit's pretty good. If not, let's just diplomatically say that the birds will love it. I've tried it when it's dry, and it's a bit dry. There's the flowers. I mean, isn't that gorgeous? Again, you're not sacrificing anything. This is a little bit different being in my living room, as it were. And if we get photobombed by the world's largest dog, I should probably warn you that we are in the process of adopting a really, really cool dog. So if he suddenly ends up between you and me, you'll know what's going on. Oric, this is his third night in the house. Oh, no, first night in the house, third day. Anyway, just a heads up. What a different world we live in suddenly. And you can see, if you look at all the anthers on those flowers, all the little yellow, yellowy cream colored things that are there, this is a plant that is really, really good for pollinators as well. Solomon seal is another one of my bulletproof plants for shade. Some Solomon seal, pardon the alliteration, have a beautiful yellow fall color as well. Not all. You can eat this, you can eat the new shoots. I will tell you ahead of time, they're a bit bitter. Take off the old leaf, well, the leaves first, and then you can cook them just like you'd cook asparagus. It is a bit bitter, but when I serve it with a little bit of teriyaki sauce, it was delicious. And we talk about hummingbird flowers and how they're red and tubular. Hummingbirds love this plant as well, which is kind of funky and beautiful architecture. This is a low maintenance meadow garden. I would love to see factories, industry devoting maybe 30% of their land to meadow gardens. This is an ecosystem that we need more of. There's a large number of species that thrive in meadow gardens, and I think that this would be a great way for us to improve biodiversity and lower maintenance and lower our carbon footprint. Look up at Airport in Stuttgart, Arkansas when you have time, and you'll learn a lot about carbon sequestration and how shortgrass prairie in this particular instance can do a lot for the environment. As I said, it doesn't have to be a visual sacrifice. This is a garden near Royal York and Bloor, pure sand soil. This family wanted all of the grass taken out, and they wanted an English cottage garden done with native plants. And this is not everybody's type of garden, but it's amazing. Nobody in the neighborhood wanted this. Nobody came and asked me, hey, I saw that garden over there. Can you come and do that at my place? But everybody walks past this garden and stops and looks at the butterflies and the bees and the birds, and they love this garden. They just need to broaden their horizons a little bit. And there's a lesson here as well, in that if you have a garden that's riddled with boxwood and hydrangeas, which is, everybody wants that garden, you're going to have problems like the new box tree moth. You're going to have problems like boxwood psyllid, and they're not good with salt, and hydrangeas are getting hydrangea leaf tire. Variety equals resilience. So that's super, super important to remember. And also be patient. This is not HGTV. They've done wonderful things for gardening, but they've also trained us that a garden is supposed to look instant. This is the same garden. This garden, 3 years later, became this. So they sleep, they creep, then they leap. Be patient. Gardening teaches patience. I think that's one of the most valuable things that gardening does for us. So important to remember. Some other great plants. This is the hackberry, also called the bastard elm. One of my students taught me that. I'm saying, oh man, that's so much cooler than hackberry. And it is, the bastard elm is food for the snout butterfly. I was one of those creepy little kids that collected insects. Now I just take pictures of them. I have still not seen a snout butterfly, but this is a great bulletproof plant for boulevards. If you're having trouble getting something to survive, this will do a great job. It's not spectacular, but it's always looking good, and it puts up with anything. It's a great plant, and it's good for biodiversity as well. That is not a bird poop on the. No, that's not a bird poop. That's the caterpillar for a giant swallowtail, our largest butterfly by far. Actually, it's a beautiful butterfly, and you can plant a plant called prickly ash in your garden, or anything in the citrus family. Rue. I imagine if you put your lemon outside in the summertime. I have a Meyer lemon. I actually made lemon sherbet this winter from my lemons that I grew in the garden and then brought inside. And all of those plants, anything in the citrus family, are food for the caterpillar. And prickly ash, we planted it in the garden here, and we've been nurturing it. And the first time that we saw a giant swallowtail sort of floating through the garden was absolute magic. Other plants that are great for your garden, larch It's a forsythia tree. They're spectacular. I love in the top center there, those are the catkins on trembling aspen, which is great for masking street noise as well. All of the different birches, don't put them on a high mound in the middle of your front lawn. That's not where they love to be. They love wet feet. They need to be able to cool themselves if they're going to live a long time. A great fall color, you know, again, a lot going for them. All the different grasses that you might have in the garden. I try and avoid miscanthus grass. Some of them can be quite invasive, but big blue stem, little blue stem, switch grasses, they're all wonderful plants. And once you've got them going in your garden, then they're going forever, and they're fantastic things. And again, just because it's a grass doesn't mean it's not food for various different butterflies and so on. Pagoda dogwood, all the dogwoods again. Bayberry puts up with any situation. Even a bit of shade, actually. And like the hollies, it needs male and female plants. So you want to plant a few of them so that you get some of these super cool berries. Lovely, lovely plant. Our perennial native hibiscus, blueberries if you've got acid soil, or you can grow them in a pot and use a peat-based mix and acid soil. The reason that we want people growing natives, the reason that it's good to grow natives is that they are food for so many different creatures in the garden. There are all sorts of caterpillars that feed on native plants that are then in turn fed upon by birds. And that's going to be so much better for the environment, because if you have lots of birds in your garden, then you have fewer pests in your garden. Planting pawpaws, I would guide you away from planting a pawpaw in a small yard. I thought that was a great idea. In fact, I planted a pawpaw in my yard, hoping to get zebra swallowtails, because that ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to see a zebra swallowtail. But pawpaw is a colony forming plant, so you definitely don't want it in a small yard. You want it out at the edges of a large yard, but you do want pawpaw. If you can find a place for pawpaw, or if we can get some of them planted in our local parks, that would be fantastic. And remember to match plants to the soil. Okay. I gotta show you, there's Orc. This is the new dog who is messing with the slideshow. Welcome to my living room. That's okay. Like I said, we gotta learn to relax. This is Oakville clay, and Oakville, everybody in Oakville, I mean, there are brickyards, so and they think you can't garden in clay soil, but you can do beautiful work. You look here and you'll see purple coneflower. You'll see roses in wisteria, which are, there is a near native wisteria. You'll see yarrows and potentilla in there. These are all plants that do really, really well in clay soil. This is sandy soil down in Burlington, and again, a memory that this doesn't have to be, a reminder that this doesn't have to be ugly. That's summer phlox, some are not. Coneflowers, there's some debate as to whether yucca are native or not, or whether they were brought here by the native peoples. In any case, close enough. Down in Windsor, there are wild stands of yuccas, and it's a great plant that has great winter interest as well. So you look at all the variety that you can have and how you don't have to be giving up anything. And are there other things we can do? Can we be using different plants when we do green roofing? Green roofing is wonderful for the environment, and it's wonderful for the building. It's wonderful for our budget in the long run, although it's a reminder there too that we need to think more long term. But can we be planting things like nodding onion on green roofing and have it do well? Yeah, we can. There's lots of plants, native plants, that would do better than sedum mats. And I'm not knocking sedum mats at all. I think they're spectacular. But we can broaden our horizons when we use these. I did talk very briefly about the Grow Me Instead guide. Really, if you look up Grow Me Instead Ontario, it's a very Canadian thing. We don't tell people what to do. We just suggest that maybe they could do other things. So there's a Norway maple. Can't garden under it. The burgundy fellow there is a ruby lace honey locust, a much better plant, and it supports biodiversity. There is a list of native plant nurseries here, and as Aileen was mentioning, there is another list of places that will ship to you or that you can pick stuff up from. We do have we're very lucky, we have a lot of interesting native plant nurseries. We're going to take questions presently, and folks can feel free to reach out to me on any number of different platforms. I love questions. Questions make me learn more. Questions help me share information. I love public questions. You can certainly email me anytime, but public questions mean that everybody gets to learn from the question. Someone was asking, one of the very first question that came in by email was about how do you get started with native plants? And I think it's important to sort of baby step into things. You can have one native plant, you've done something good. Pretty much all the native plants are bulletproof. They're good garden candidates as far as survival goes. Most nurseries now, most retail nurseries are starting to focus on native plants a bit more, which is fantastic. So pick something that suits your soil. Pick something that suits your exposure. So is it windy, is it shady, is it sunny? And then you're off to the races. So you might want to start with a success. You've seen the new dog in the house. So we're trying to give him opportunities for success before we start with the discipline thing. And so something like a potentilla, or a goldenrod or solidago, or even some of the clump forming milkweeds. Do you have good drainage? Then you might want the orange butterfly milkweed. Do you have poor drainage? Again, so judgmental, aren't we? If you have a wet area in your backyard or whatever, then that's a great place to plant marsh milkweed. And then you're doing so much more good. But start, baby steps. And I would, from a design standpoint, I would suggest not buying one of something, but buying 3 of something so that it has an impact in your garden visually. They say that animals are going to find it better if there's a drift. We would call that a drift of plants, of several of the plants. I don't know if I buy that or not. I think that it's tough. I think that the butterflies are going to find it anyway. I think that the birds and the bees are going to find it anyway. I think that it's better for us to plant several of something, to plant 3 or 5 of something, because then it's going to have more visual impact. Now, I don't know, I can't see the questions.
Well,
maybe
I've been tracking them, Sean, so I'll help out.
Thank you. Hey.
The first one was from Sandra, and you've touched on it a bit, but she was asking about plants for sandy soils without having to constantly amend it with compost or manure. So I know you touched on some, but maybe you have a few other that you might
Oh, that's a really good, there's a couple of good points there, actually. Amending the soil is a lot of work, and soil is going to try and return to its natural form. It's very good at that. So sandy soil, plant plants that love sandy soil. So a lot of the asters are fantastic. The butterfly milkweed is fantastic. Black, if you've got space, black oak and sassafras are great in sandy soil. Liatus or gay feather, those are good in sandy soil as well. There's a beautiful plant that we didn't mention called hoary vervain, H-O-A-R-Y, vervain, and it's a beautiful plant that St. William's Nurseries, I think, has, and sometimes the North American Native Plant Society. That's a great resource for people as well. Those are all plants that will stand super sandy soil as well. And surprisingly so will things like willows and dogwoods. They'll put up with anything. Remember all of those plants that you saw in that one picture that had the ironweed in it and that had the silphium, which is the huge leaves on cup plant or compass plant, different plants, but great plants. Those are all good sand tolerant plants as well. And there's a wonderful nativar called Autumn Revolution Celastris, which is bittersweet, Autumn Revolution bittersweet. And it is a revolution because it has more berries, it has male and female on the same plant, it has these yellow berries that open to reveal orange fruit in the fall and yellow fall color, and it is a vine that is a great plant that loves sandy soil as well.
Okay, forgot to turn myself off mute. So the next one, this is from Christine, I believe, and she says that the town of Markham has planted smooth serviceberry, and it's about 5 years old, and she's wondering how long she has to wait till she gets some fruit.
I would go out on a limb and say that the birds are getting to it before she sees it. They should already be bearing fruit. They're a good fruiting plant. So I'm a little surprised that it's not already bearing fruit. It could be that it's a bit shaded there for it. And remember, even if it's not bearing the fruit, you're still going to get other advantages. Serviceberry is a young bearing plant, another good sandy plant. There's a place called onplants.ca, Ontario Native Plants, and they sell Amelanchier arborea, which is a tree-form serviceberry, which also stands very little soil. It grows on in Dundas. There's a place in Dundas that I like going called Webster's Falls, and I like going there because there's a little bit of soil. So everything that grows there is a really good plant for thin soil.
Okay, thank you. And then I have another question, and I didn't catch who did it, but this is a credible source for what is edible.
Credible edible. I don't know how they pull it off. There's a company called Lone Pines Press, and Lone Pines Press produced these wonderful quality books that talk about the edibility of plants. So there's forest plants of Central Ontario, there's wetland plants for Ontario, and so on. And they will mention in there what plants are edible. I have a Pinterest page for edible plants that you don't have to plant every year. That has a lot of edibles as well. Beyond that, I actually don't know. But if somebody wants to email me, then I'll see what I can dig up as well. And another great place to find information, there's the Ontario Master Gardeners Facebook page. So if you search Master Gardeners of Ontario on Facebook, there's a place that you can go and ask questions, and Master Gardeners will trip over themselves to answer your question, which is a wonderful, wonderful resource. So you can join that. They will ask you a question at the beginning when you're trying to join. Make sure you answer the question so that we know you're real. I'm a moderator there, but that would be a good conversation to have, because there's a lot of native plants that you can nibble upon that are really good for you and delicious as well. Basswood leaves. Basswoods are about to come into leaf, and it's a good lettuce substitute. They've got these great big heart-shaped leaves that are well, they taste just like lettuce, which is to say not like much, but they're much better for you than lettuce, and they're great in a salad. And there's lots of plants that have edible flowers and so on. So yeah, I think that would be a much bigger conversation to have. Maybe that's a good idea for a speech.
And there was a book that I've had for years. It's called Edible Wild Plants of North America, and it's got some great resources, including how to make birch bark beer. Yeah.
Hemlock, the tree hemlock is edible. I had a book growing up when I was a kid, and it's around here somewhere, called Wild Plums and Brandy. And I don't even know if you could buy it anymore. That'd be worth looking up, because it was a great book. It had whole recipes about how to cook things. Because we haven't even touched on things. One of the things I'm going to try this year is the new shoots of cattails when they're coming up. There's all kinds of plants that we can eat in the landscape. There's all kinds of plants that you shouldn't, so it's good to research what's what. But yeah, it's a great thing to look into a bit deeper.
Okay. Our next question, I'm sorry, I've seemed to have lost who's asking them, so I apologize. What is a good native plant for a small garden bed? And also, thank you for the amazing presentation. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us.
It depends on if it's sun or shade. A good plant for a small garden bed in the shade would be zigzag goldenrod, one of my favorites. I would also recommend people in the sun use the silky dogwood. That's a wonderful plant for wet or dry. Another small native that's fantastic, we touched on butterfly milkweed. That's a nice small plant. Just because you have a small garden doesn't mean you need a small plant, by the way. But a good small tree, serviceberry, and what is sometimes known as Indian raisin or nannyberry. Those are good trees for small gardens as well. And there are dwarf nativars of 9-barks, like Tiny Wine Gold and Little Devil, which is just fun to say in the garden. Those are great plants for the small garden as well.
Okay, the next one is, what is a good native vine to grow on a chain link fence in clay soils? Lots of sun. It's really hard to read these. Using it as a hedge on a small strip of grass front lawn, divider between me and my neighbor, want to attract butterflies and hummingbirds.
So I have 3 thoughts. If it's wet, and even if it isn't, but especially if it's wet, then Virgensbauer clematis would be really, really good. There is a native we have a native vine honeysuckle, Linicer sempervirens, and there's a variety of it called Major Wheeler honeysuckle, which is a fantastic plant that's brilliant for pollinators and hummingbirds. It's got long tubular red flowers all summer long, and better than the rest of the vining honeysuckles, it doesn't get powdery mildew, and it's even a little bit shade tolerant if you see it in the wild. And of course, the other one I mentioned, the bittersweet. I would be very cautious planting. There are two native vines, trumpet vine and pipe vine, or Dutchman's pipe. They're lovely plants, and they're great for all sorts of different species, and they want to take over the world, which we would term aggressive, as opposed to invasive, which is a plant not from here that wants to take over the world. So that should keep you out of trouble.
Okay, and then ahead of that was, there was one about what insects does the dwarf Arctic willow attract?
My first answer would be the willow leaf beetle, and it is apparently a delicious little beetle that birds love to eat, so it's really good for biodiversity. There's also flea beetles, little jumping beetles that feed on willows. There's also all kinds, and I don't actually know a better answer for this, although they won't suffer from toothaches if they're eating on willows. There's all kinds of small caterpillars that are going to feed on willows as well, that are going to be good for biodiversity. I have a peach-leafed willow outside my office window, and it's time to poll it. I just remembered that. It's fantastic. We had 7 different species of birds in one day, from orioles to brown thrashers, that were feeding in and around that tree, which is pretty impressive. Willows are brilliant for biodiversity.
Okay, our next question is, when people say native, does that mean plants that are native to the Mississauga level, Ontario level, or Canada level, even North American level?
It's fuzzy. That's a really good question. The closer, the better. Certain people are going to be urging you to plant plants from locally harvested seed, which is fantastic. I take a more broad view when I'm thinking of natives. I think of assisted migration, which is a concept where we move plants norther and norther faster than they can move on their own, but the climate is changing quickly enough that I think that that's probably a good thing to do to support creatures as they're being forced to move north. I kind of look, so if you want to find out if a plant is native, if you put in the botanical name, so you look up silky dogwood, Cornus amomum, and the letters USDA after that, you can see where in North America a plant is native to. The Americans, it's just a really good website for that. And you can see something that's native in Pennsylvania or New York or Ohio. You can see what's near native to here. And so that sort of broadens the palette that you can use, and that's controversial. Some people are going to go, oh, I can't believe you're suggesting that, and that's fine. You know, we can have a big debate about that and have fun, but that's the great thing about Canada, is that we can debate about something and then go have a beer. I take a fairly broad view, the same as I'm okay with nativars, cultivars of native plants. If that's what it takes me to get a native plant into somebody's garden, they might not be okay with regular 9-bark, but they might be okay with some of the nativars of it. Personally, I'm okay with that. But we've each got our own likes and dislikes and tolerance levels. So.
And then we have a question. What do you think, or why do you think native plants aren't as common in the horticultural industry yet? I like the positivity on that end part.
Yes. Well,
because we haven't got to them yet, right?
Some of it is preconceptions. Some of it is that people want what happened there? The world just ended. That's okay. Hopefully you can still hear me. Can you still hear me? Hello?
I can still hear you. I think, oh, there we go. It's just your screen, yep.
Okay. Yeah, because you went away. Anyway, I had a customer who wanted a white garden, a garden that was all native, all white flowers and white variegations. And that was pretty cool. And she looked across the road and said, here, that's what I want, and pointed at a garden that was all boxwood and hydrangeas. And I looked at her and I said, no. The idea that the customer is always right, I don't know who came up with that, but I'm not a fan. I explained that variety is resilience. We are used to telling people yes when they ask for something. We so-called professional horticulturists, and I think that our job should be to take the reins and show people why natives are better. They're better for water use. They're better for establishment. They're better for biodiversity, which means better for resilience, which means better for food security and protect the bees and save the monarchs. We need to be less Canadian about things. Don't sit in the corner and wait for people to notice you. If you've learned something, take it out to the public and show them, show your friends, make it the water cooler talk, show people how cool native plants are and educate them. Don't take no for an answer.
And then we have one. Can you spell out the name of the native honeysuckle you referred to?
Major Wheeler. It's Major, like my old dog, M-A-J-O-R, Wheeler, W-H-E-E-L-E-R, Major Wheeler.
All right. And then somebody did ask, I guess someone couldn't get here on time, so they missed the beginning. So it is being recorded, hopefully. Again, this is our first try. So our plan is to have that available later on online. And I know a few people were having challenges finding the handouts, so we'll also send out an email with those as well. Hopefully they're not too big, just in case anyone is having difficulty. And then if you want to watch the whole session or watch it again because it was so exciting, we'll get that online and let you guys know.
People can email me as well, and I can invite them to the Google Drive file if they're having trouble getting just the PDF of the talk. And that way you've got your clickable links as well. That's just another option. By the way, shout out to my buddy Will, who's kept the new dog Oric off the computer throughout all this. He's performing miracles over there. You don't know what's going on in the background.
Okay, and when is the best time to move or transplant bee balm?
Spring is the best time to move almost any perennial. If you do it, right now before they get a head of steam up, then they're not even going to know that they were moved. The second best time would be late August, early September, so that they get their roots in the ground before the freeze thaw of wintertime gets here. And I would recommend mulching up some leaves and sprinkling them about an inch thick around the crown if you do it in the fall. Well, anytime. There's a new concept, by the way, that's worth touching on, and it seems like as good a time as any. Let it lay or let it lie, we're not sure which, where instead of cleaning up everything and putting it in bags, and we won't even, I'll just leave that where it is, but cut things down in little layers and just let it lay in the garden. And all of the creatures that will live in it, all the hollow stems of the perennials that can become potential bee homes, and it's easier. So just something to think about. It improves your soil, and all of the things like rove beetles and ground beetles, things that eat slug and snail eggs, are going to be better off. And then the birds actually will go nuts in that litter looking for creepy crawlies as well. So just a sidebar.
All right, so I think that's the last of the questions. I haven't seen any new ones pop in. Last chance. Nope. Okay.
You could always reach me on Facebook or whatever as well.
And as I said, we'll be emailing it out. It'll come from landtrust@oakridgesmoraine.org. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see some of you at the next presentation, which is the what to do with the downpour. And maybe some of you guys will get involved in the new Earth Day Challenge, the Bio-Olympics. So I hope everybody has a wonderful night. Thank you for joining. Please stay safe, and we'll virtually see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Now I have to figure out how to turn it off. I just hit the X and hope for the best. Okay, there we go. Okay.